Have you ever wondered how people who owned nothing shaped empires that ruled everything? How men who walked barefoot on burning sand ended up changing the destiny of kings? Today, we are going back in time, to the desert, to the people the world has forgotten, but history never could. The story begins in a vast desert, a place where the wind sings with sand and the horizon never ends, a land that tests every step, every breath, every hope. This desert had no gold, no rivers, no palaces, only silence, heat, and endless miles of nothing. Yet from this nothing came some of the strongest people in history. Nomads, wanderers, families who carried their home in their hearts, not on land. These desert people didn't have cities. They didn't have armies. They didn't even have permanent houses. But they had something far more powerful: survival, unity, and a spirit that refused to break. And this is the story of how those forgotten nomads shaped empires even kings feared. In the middle of the great desert lived a young boy named Zahir. He belonged to a wandering tribe, one of many who traveled with their camels, goats, and tents made of woven hair. Zahir grew up in the harshest lands a human could ever face. A land where water was more valuable than gold. A land where one wrong step could cost a life. A land where the sun felt like fire on the skin and the nights felt like ice on the bones. But Zahir was different. He didn't see the desert as a place of suffering. To him, it was a living teacher. He listened to the wind. He watched the stars. He rode with the caravans that crossed lonely dunes. And he loved to hear stories. Stories of ancient empires, lost kingdoms, and forgotten people. Every night, old travelers would share tales around the fire. Some spoke of kings who ruled from golden thrones. Some spoke of armies that shook the earth with their march. Some spoke of cities that touched the sky. Zahir listened to every word. And one night, he asked a simple question. How did those great empires begin? Were they always strong? The old man beside the fire smiled gently and said, "No empire begins strong, Zahir. They begin with people. People who dared to face the impossible." Those words stayed in Zahir's heart. Zahir's tribe was always on the move. When the sun rose, they packed their tents. When the wind shifted, they changed direction. When a water well dried, they searched for another. Life was simple, but never easy. Every child learned how to survive the desert, how to read the stars, how to find water by examining the flight of birds, how to sense danger long before it arrived. These skills were not taught in books. They were carved into their souls. Zahir grew strong, not because he was bigger than other boys, but because he learned to trust his instincts. He learned patience from the desert sunsets. He learned courage from the storms that tore through the dunes. He learned humility from the silence of endless lands. And slowly, he began to understand something. Empires are built by those who understand their land. And the nomads understood the desert better than anyone. Far away from Zahir's tribe, the world was changing fast. Big kingdoms were rising. New cities were being built. Trade routes were expanding like long rivers of wealth and power. But with growth came greed. With wealth came war. And with war came fear. Every kingdom wanted to control the trade routes that crossed the desert. Why? Because whoever controlled the desert roads controlled the lifeline of the empire. But there was a problem. The desert belonged to no king. No army could survive its heat. No foreign soldier could travel far without losing his way. No empire could tame its storms. Only one kind of people could travel through the heart of the burning sands, the nomads. And soon, everyone wanted their help. Kingdoms needed guides. Merchants needed protection. Caravans needed safe passage. The desert, which looked empty from the outside, was becoming the most important place in the world. And Zahir's tribe was right in the center of it. Zahir in Palace Hall, king blurred in background one morning. When Zahir was about 17, his father returned from a long meeting with the elders. His face was serious. His voice was calm, but heavy. "Zahir," he said, "it is time for you to join your first long caravan. Zahir's heart began to race. This was the moment every young man of the tribe waited for, the moment they stepped into the desert not as a child, but as a guardian of the tribe. He asked softly, "Where will we go?" His father replied, "To the city of Kadar, a great kingdom beyond the southern dunes. They need our guidance." Zahir felt a mix of fear and excitement. He had never left the tribe's familiar paths. He had never seen the world outside the desert. He had never walked into the lands of kings. But he knew this journey would change him. On the day of departure, the tribe gathered around the travelers. Camels knelt in long rows. Packs were tied tightly. Water skins were filled, counted, and counted again. Older men stood near the fire, praying for safety. Mothers held back tears. Children watched with shining eyes. Zahir's father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember," he said, "the desert is our friend, but it can turn against those who forget to respect it." Zahir nodded. He repeated the ancient words of the tribe. "Walk soft, breathe calm, trust the land, fear nothing." Then the caravan moved. The desert stretched out like an ocean of gold. The sun painted long shadows behind them. Their footsteps disappeared as quickly as they were made. And the journey began. During the first few days, Zahir walked beside an old guide named Samir. Samir had traveled through every dune, every ridge, every hidden path. Zahir asked him, "How do you know where to go? There are no signs, no roads, just sand." Samir smiled. "The desert speaks," he said. "You just have to listen." He pointed at the wind. "See the way it blows? It tells us where the sand is soft." He pointed at the sky. "See the clouds? They tell us where the heat will rise." He pointed at the tracks of a beetle. "Even the smallest creature knows where life hides." Zahir looked around with new eyes. What once seemed empty now felt full of meaning. For the first time, he understood why kings feared the desert, why armies failed in it, why only nomads survived. A man could memorize a book, but he could not memorize a desert. He had to feel it, breathe it, live it. On the fourth night, while the caravan rested, Zahir noticed something strange. The air felt heavy. The wind had stopped. The sky looked too still. He walked to Samir and whispered, "Something is wrong." Samir closed his eyes for a moment. Then his face changed. "Sandstorm," he said, "coming fast." The camp exploded into action. Women tied down tents. Men gathered animals. Water skins were covered. Children were rushed under shelter. Zahir's heart pounded. This would be his first real test. The storm hit like a giant breathing fire. The wind howled. Sand filled the air. The sky turned dark. The ground disappeared. Zahir wrapped his face with cloth, held the rope connecting him to the caravan, and lowered his body to the ground. All he could hear was the roar of the desert, as if the earth itself was screaming. For hours the storm raged, and for the first time Zahir understood. Surviving the desert was not a skill. It was a battle. When the storm finally passed, the world around them looked different. Dunes had shifted. Paths had vanished. Everything had changed. But the caravan was still alive. And Zahir felt something new inside him, a quiet strength, a deep confidence. He had faced the desert, and the desert had accepted him. What Zahir didn't know was that this storm was only the beginning. A far greater threat was waiting for him at the end of the journey, one that would pull him into the politics, power, and danger of great kingdoms. A threat that would turn a simple nomad boy into the key to an empire's survival. After many weeks of walking, surviving storms, crossing dunes, and finding hidden wells, the caravan finally reached the gates of Kadar, one of the richest cities in the southern kingdoms. Zahir froze. He had never seen walls so high, markets so loud, streets so crowded, or buildings that touched the sky like mountains made by human hands. People wore bright colors. Merchants shouted prices in voices louder than camels. The smell of spices filled the air. Everything sparkled. Gold, silk, jewels. To Zahir, it felt like entering another world. But he also felt something else. eyes watching. People stared at the nomads as if they were strangers from another planet. Some of them admired the desert travelers. Others looked down on them. Many were afraid of them. Zahir whispered, "Why do they look at us like this?" Samir replied softly, "Because they need us, but they don't understand us." The caravan was taken straight to the palace. Zahir walked behind his father, his heart beating fast. The king of Kadar was a tall, stern-looking man with a heavy crown and eyes that studied everything. He welcomed the tribe with respect, but his face held deep worry. He said, "Desert travelers, I thank you for coming. I need your help. Our kingdom is in danger." Everyone fell silent. The king continued, "A powerful enemy is preparing to attack us. Their armies are stronger. Their numbers are greater, and they are moving through the desert using secret paths." Zahir felt a chill. Secret paths? Only nomads knew those. The king stood up, voice trembling with fear. "If they reach us, Kadar will fall. Our people will fall. Our empire will fall." He looked at the nomad elders. "I need someone who understands the desert better than the enemy does. I need a guide. I need a protector. I need one of you." The room waited. Zahir looked at his father and was shocked. The king was looking directly at him. The king stepped closer. "Who is this young man?" he asked. Zahir's father answered, "My son, Zahir." The king studied the boy's eyes. "You have walked through the heart of storms and lived. You have traveled without fear. You have instincts that can save lives." Zahir felt his throat tighten. He had never imagined standing before a king. Then the king said the words that changed everything. "Zahir, I want you to help us defend Kadar. Guide us through the desert. Show us how to stop the enemy army before it reaches our walls." Zahir's heart shook. He was only 17. He had just finished his first caravan journey. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a leader. He whispered, "Why me?" The king answered, "Because you see the desert not as danger, but as a teacher. And that is the kind of person who shapes destiny." That night, Zahir could not sleep. He sat alone under the stars, feeling torn between fear and responsibility. His thoughts raced. What if I fail? What if people die because of me? What if I'm not ready? The desert wind moved gently, brushing the sand around him. It felt almost like a whisper. In that silence, Zahir remembered the words of the old man from his tribe. Empires are built by those who dare to face the impossible. He looked up at the stars, the same stars that guided his ancestors. He felt the strength of the land beneath him. Slowly, a calm courage filled his heart. "I will go," he said to himself. "I will guide them. I will protect them." The next morning, Zahir, his father, Samir, and a group of Kadar soldiers prepared to leave. Their mission was dangerous. Find the enemy army, discover their route, lead Kadar's forces through the desert safely. Stop the invasion before it begins. On the horizon, dark dust clouds rose. The enemy was moving fast. Samir looked at Zahir. "This is no longer a journey," he said. "This is war." And Zahir knew. The desert was about to test him in ways he had never imagined. On the third day of traveling, Zahir noticed something. Footprints in the sand, broken branches, a piece of cloth stuck to a thorn. He knelt down, examining everything carefully. Samir asked, "What do you see?" Zahir replied, "The enemy was here, not long ago, maybe a day." The soldiers looked nervous. Zahir walked further, then stopped abruptly. His heart sank. Ahead of them lay the remains of a destroyed caravan. Burned tents, broken crates, scattered belongings. A sign that the enemy was not simply passing. They were destroying everything in their path. Zahir whispered, "They are trying to cut off all trade, all supplies, before attacking the kingdom." His father said, "This is not just war. This is starvation." Zahir closed his eyes, trying to imagine the enemy's strategy. And then, something clicked. "They're hiding in the northern dunes," he said. That's where the winds hide their movements. That's where armies disappear. Samir stared at him with surprise. "You're thinking like a commander," he said. But Zahir didn't feel proud. He felt afraid. The enemy was smart, but the desert was smarter. And one wrong decision could cost thousands of lives. Zahir now stood at the edge of the greatest challenge of his life. The enemy was closer than anyone expected. The kingdom was running out of time, and the fate of an empire rested on the instincts of a desert boy. But the real danger was still waiting for him, hidden beneath the silent dunes. Zahir led the soldiers toward the northern dunes, the most dangerous part of the desert. This place was known as the Silent Dunes. Here the sand was soft like powder. The wind was unpredictable. The dunes moved like waves. Many travelers who entered never came out. But if Zahir was right, the enemy would be hiding there, using the desert to move unseen. They walked for hours. The sun burned like fire. Everyone was growing tired. Then suddenly, Zahir stopped. Samir noticed it first. "What is it?" he whispered. Zahir looked around slowly, then said in a quiet voice, "The desert feels wrong." The soldiers exchanged confused glances. Samir understood immediately. "Everyone get low," he ordered. They knelt. They waited. The wind was too calm, the air too still. Zahir placed his palm on the sand. It was vibrating. His eyes widened. "There beneath the dunes," he whispered. Before anyone could react, the sand exploded. Enemy soldiers burst out from beneath the dunes, shouting war cries. Arrows flew through the air. Swords clashed. Dust rose like smoke. Kadar's soldiers were caught by surprise. Some fell instantly. Others tried to hold their ground. Zahir felt his heart racing. He had never faced real war. He had never seen so much chaos. He heard his father shout, "Zahir, get back!" But Zahir didn't run. He scanned the dunes. He watched how the enemy moved. He listened to the sound of the sand. And then it hit him. The enemy wasn't just attacking. They were guiding Kadar's army into a trap. A dead zone. A place where the dunes collapsed like waves. If they stayed, they would all be buried alive. Zahir grabbed Samir's arm. "We need to move. The dunes will fall." Samir saw the terror in Zahir's eyes and believed him instantly. He shouted, "Retreat to the ridge. Everyone move now." But the soldiers were surrounded, and Zahir made the toughest decision of his life. He climbed a high dune alone, right in the middle of the battlefield. Arrows whistled past him. War cries filled the air. Sandstorm winds were kicking up. His father screamed, "Zahir, get down." But the boy didn't stop. He reached the top of the dune and shouted with all his strength, "The ridge! Follow the ridge! Move now!" His voice cut through the chaos. Kadar's soldiers heard him, confused, but trusting. They began moving toward the ridge. The enemy realized what Zahir was doing. He was saving the army. Dozens of enemy archers turned their bows toward him. Zahir stood alone on the dune, heart pounding, sand whipping against his face. And he shouted again, "Run! Now!" Arrows flew toward him. But in that exact moment, something powerful happened. A massive gust of wind erupted. It hit the dunes like a hammer. The sand beneath the enemy soldiers cracked. And suddenly, the dunes collapsed. The enemy fighters were swallowed by the desert itself. Their own hiding place became their grave. Zahir watched with shock as entire sections of sand dropped like waterfalls. A natural trap they had created turned against them. Samir grabbed Zahir and pulled him down as the dune beneath them shook. They ran toward the ridge, gasping for breath. Behind them, the desert roared. Within minutes, the battlefield was transformed into silence again. As if no army had ever been there. The desert had ended the war. But it was Zahir who had saved the kingdom. When they reached a safe distance, the soldiers looked at Zahir with amazement. One man said, "If he had not warned us, none of us would be alive." Another added, "He sees the desert like no one else." Zahir's father placed his hand on his son's shoulder, tears in his eyes. You did what even the bravest warriors could not, he whispered. You listened to the desert, and you understood. Zahir felt no pride, only relief. He whispered, I only did what I had to do. When they returned to Kadar, the people cheered. The king embraced Zahir like a son. He said, You saved my kingdom, not with weapons, but with wisdom. He offered Zahir gold, titles, and land. But Zahir shook his head. I want none of that, he said gently. I only want to return to my tribe. My home is the desert. The king smiled. Then you shall return as a protector of kingdoms, and a friend of Kadar forever. Zahir's journey was not just about survival. It was about destiny. A simple nomad boy had changed the fate of an empire. But the story isn't finished yet. The greatest lesson, the moral of Zahir's journey, is yet to come. Zahir walked back into the desert with his father, Samir, and the rest of the tribe. The kingdom of Kadar faded behind them, the cheers and celebrations becoming a distant memory. For Zahir, fame meant nothing. Titles meant nothing. Gold meant nothing. What mattered to him was the desert, the wind, the quiet, the endless sky, the simple life of a nomad. When the tribe saw him, they did not greet him like a hero. They greeted him like family, with warm smiles, open arms, and gentle words. His mother touched his face. You went as a boy, she whispered, but you returned as something more. Zahir felt tears rise, not because of pride, but because he had come home. That night, the tribe gathered around the fire. The stars glowed above like thousands of lanterns. The oldest elder, wise and gentle, looked at Zahir and said, Stories of your courage have already reached far lands. But do you know what makes you special, Zahir? Zahir shook his head. It is not your bravery, the elder said. It is not your skill. It is not your intelligence. He paused, letting the night grow silent. It is your humility. You never forgot who you are. And that is why the desert trusted you. The tribe nodded in agreement. Zahir listened with respect. The elder continued, Empires rise and fall. Kings come and go. But people who stay humble leave a mark that never disappears. Zahir felt those words settle deep in his heart. Years passed. Zahir grew older. He became a guide, a teacher, a storyteller. He taught children how to read the wind, how to find water in the hardest places, how to stay brave in times of fear. And every now and then, messengers from far kingdoms visited his tribe. They asked, Zahir, will you help us again? We need your wisdom. But Zahir never left the desert permanently. He helped when needed, but returned home after every journey. Because he knew something most people never understood. Strength doesn't come from what you own. It comes from who you are. Long after Zahir's time, the story of the nomad boy who saved a kingdom was told in palaces, in markets, and in travelers' camps across many lands. Kings spoke of him with respect. Soldiers remembered him as the boy who stood alone on a dune. Merchants told their children about the nomad who saw danger in the sand before anyone else. Some called him a warrior. Some called him a savior. Some called him the desert's son. But Zahir always called himself something simpler, a traveler who listens. And now, my friend, the story returns to you. Because Zahir's journey is not only about the past. It holds a lesson for every person who faces challenges today. Here is the truth. White medium star 1. You don't need perfect conditions to rise. Zahir was born in the harshest land, with no wealth, no power, no comfort. But he became the key to an empire's survival. Your beginnings don't define your ending. White medium star 2. Your real strength comes from your experiences. The same desert that tried to break Zahir taught him how to survive, how to lead, how to stay calm in a storm. Your struggles are training you for the moment life will need your strength. White medium star 3. Humility makes you unforgettable. After saving thousands of lives, Zahir didn't become proud. He didn't demand rewards. He didn't try to be someone else. He stayed true to who he was. People with humility travel far. People with ego get lost. White medium star 4. Even the smallest voice can change the course of an empire. Zahir was just a teenager, yet he stood on a dune and commanded an army to safety. You may think you are small, but one brave decision can change everything. White medium star 5. The world remembers those who help with a pure heart. Zahir didn't help the king for gold. He helped because it was the right thing, and that is why his name lived on. When you act with honesty, you become part of a story much bigger than yourself. My friend, your life, like Zahir's, is a journey through deserts and storms. There will be challenges. There will be fears. There will be moments that shake you. But remember, you are stronger than the desert. You are wiser than the storm. And your footsteps, even if they begin small, can shape your own empire. Stay humble. Stay brave. Stay true. And one day, the world will remember your story too.